Welcome to Your Money. I'm Christine Romans. Ali Velshi has the week off. Why are so many people ready to call the turn in this economy? The evidence just this week includes consumer confidence, much stronger than expected. As Americans save more and cut their debt, they're feeling better about the future. And purchases of big-ticket items rebounded, led by aircrafts, up 4.9% in July, the biggest gain in 2 years. And more evidence of bottoming in housing. New home sales rose 9.6% in July, the biggest jump since the collapse last fall. It's just one part of the housing market, but it shows builders are finding buyers for new homes. And because interest rates are still relatively low, mortgage applications rose 7.5% this week. So is it time to call the turn? The stock market certainly has. Stocks are at highs for the year, but caution. Some, like Nora Rubini, the economist who famously predicted this financial collapse, they're warning of more trouble to come in the form of a second recession. So let's see if evidence of the economy on the mend is a golden opportunity or fool's gold. Dan Gross is senior editor at Newsweek. Peter Schiff is president of Euro-Pacific Capital. Dan, let me start with you. Is it real, the turn? Do you think that it's real this time, and why?
I think so. You know, we did a cover story in Newsweek a few weeks ago saying the recession is over, but good luck surviving the recovery. I think since then the evidence has grown stronger that the economic trends are moving in the right direction. You know, the severity of the decline in the fourth quarter and the first quarter, when the economy was shrinking at a 6% annual rate, caused so many people to pull back so much, so many companies to cut so much. We're now building off that lower base. So we're still way below where we were a year ago, but we're above where we are in April, May, and June in many sectors.
Peter Schiff, you're in the fool's gold category here. You think that thinking that the economy is going to recover here is just not realistic.
No, it's not. I think maybe the Newsweek cover is a good contrary indicator. You know, I just saw, some of the graphics that you were showing. Americans are spending more money again, buying more houses, cars, big-ticket appliances. But where are we getting the money? We're borrowing it. We're going deeper into debt to buy more stuff that we can't afford. We are making the problems worse. We're not solving them.
Let me ask you, Dan, about the second half of the year, what it looks like for the home seller, the home buyer, the person looking for a job. You mentioned that the Newsweek cover was very clear when it said, have a good time in the recovery, because it's not going to feel all that great. We're still going to have an issue with unemployment, aren't we? We're still going to have an issue with consumers who are chastened, and if the credit runs out, they simply don't have more money to spend.
Absolutely. Look, with unemployment, remember our last recession ended in November 2001, and we continued to lose payroll jobs through the middle of 2003. Employers are very tough about, not wanting to add people. So I think unemployment is not going to look that great. For home sellers and home buyers, obviously there's this tax credit for buyers. The volume is picking up. But the reason it's picking up is because prices have really fallen a lot. So we have more activity at a lower volume. So the cost of buying a house now is much lower than it was. It requires you to take on substantially less debt than it did, a year ago, 2 years ago. So, if the inventory is coming down for homes, that's the good news. The bad news for sellers is that they're going to have a very difficult time getting, what they paid for that house in 04, 05, 06.
You think this bubble is still popping, though? You think that we have a credit-fueled economy that is still
Sure.
popping?
Look, the air is still coming out. There's a lot more air left. The government is trying to reflate it. It can't work, and they shouldn't be doing it. I mean, if you wanted to devise a plan to destroy our economy, all you'd have to do is adopt Ben Bernanke's monetary policy.
But they say they're rescuing our economy. No. They say that we have to do this to rescue our economy and build it for the future. You say it's a recipe for destruction.
No, that's exactly what we did in 2001 and 2002. We rescued the economy with 1% interest rates and expanded the budget deficit, and we rescued it by creating a housing bubble. We set the stage for the disaster of 2008, and I can assure you that the problems we are in the process of creating right now are far worse than the ones that we think we're solving. And the disaster that awaits, and it's not going to be 5 or 6 years from now, it might be just 1 or 2 years from now, is going to be much worse than anything we experienced in 2008.
I mean, you talk about this disaster that looms. What does that disaster look like to you?
Well, it's going to look like a collapsing dollar. And when the dollar plunges in value, it's going to send prices for everything Americans buy through the roof, especially for the price of things like food and energy. It's going to destroy the value of everybody's savings. It's going to destroy the value of everybody's wages. And it's going to wreak economic havoc in this country. And it's, what we've seen in 2008, it is a Sunday school picnic. compared to the disaster the politicians are now creating.
You know, Dan, Robert Reich on his blog, the former labor secretary on his blog, a liberal, earlier this week talked about, the concerns about the federal budget deficit numbers. And he said the only thing shocking about a $1.6 trillion federal budget deficit for this year is it's too small. The only thing alarming about it is it's too small. He said we have to think big to try to get this economy out. That seems to be, I mean, he's to the left of this administration, but that seems to be the calculus here. Spending big now to fix the economy and prevent the kinds of things that Peter's talking about.
Absolutely. Look, there is a school that says the stimulus was too small. I would say, though, we have all these apocalyptic talk about the size of the deficits going forward. These things have a way of not coming true. Remember, back in 2000, they were forecasting a $5 trillion surplus. In the early 90s, there was talk of all those massive budget deficits. By the end of the decade, it was balanced. If you look at some of the policies, and I would say, where I think Peter may be wrong, is that the difference now is that we have, I think, much more competent policymakers. We had, in addition to bad executive management throughout this past decade, really bad policy execution at the Federal Reserve, at the SEC, at all the regulatory. I personally have more faith in what's going on now.
I don't know what you base that faith on.
Let him finish.
I'm sorry?
I don't know what you base it on.
Experience, for one. But let me just give one example. Remember, a year ago, when they passed the TARP, it was $700 billion. We thought the cost of that was going to be $700 billion. Well, of course, nothing like that amount has been appropriated. And in fact, if you look at the program where they were putting money into the banks, they took $200 billion. They bought preferred shares, would pay a 5% interest rate. So far, we are making money. The taxpayers are making money on that.
We're not making money.
We're
only making money because the government handed out free money to Wall Street and they gambled with it, and they're able to pay it back. But they've created bigger problems as a result.
All right.
You're talking about we need to spend our way out of this problem. We spent our way into this problem. We're not going to get out of it by more spending, more government spending, more borrowing. We have to save our way out of this problem. We have to produce our way out of this problem. We have to deregulate our way out of this problem. We have to shrink government to get out of this problem. Everything that we have done is made the problem worse. And if you can't see that,
We have to leave it there, but that's a fascinating discussion. Thank you both for dropping by. Dan Gross, Senior Editor of Newsweek, Peter Schiff, President of Euro Pacific Capital. Gentlemen,